Whom shall we go away to? You have sayings of everlasting life. We have believed and have come to know that you are the Holy One of God. John 6. 67-69. What an expression of loyalty, even though at this point Peter and the other apostles do not fully understand what Jesus is teaching on this matter. While pleased by Peter's response, Jesus observes, I chose you 12, did I not? Yet one of you is a slanderer. John 6. 70. Jesus is speaking about Judas Iscariot. It is possible that at this point Jesus detects that Judas is starting down a wrong course. Still, it certainly brings Jesus satisfaction to know that Peter and the other apostles are not dissuaded from following him and from sharing in the life-saving work that he is doing. Jesus' words shock many. John 6. 48-71, 134. Eating his flesh and drinking his blood, many are stumbled and stop following him. How does Jesus give his flesh to people, and how can someone eat Jesus' flesh? Why are people shocked at what Jesus says about his flesh and blood, but what is he emphasizing? When many quit following Jesus, what is Peter's reaction? 55, 135. As the Passover of 32 CE approaches, Jesus is busy teaching in Galilee. Then he likely heads to Jerusalem for the Passover, as God's law requires. However, Jesus does so cautiously because the Jews are seeking to kill him. John 7. 1. After that he returns to Galilee. Jesus is probably in Capernaum when Pharisees and scribes come to him from Jerusalem. Why do they make this trip? They are looking for grounds on which to accuse Jesus of a religious offense. They ask, why do your disciples overstep the tradition of the men of former times? For example, they do not wash their hands when about to eat a meal. Matthew 15. 2. God never told his people to observe this ritual of washing their hands up to the elbow. Mark 7. 3. Yet the Pharisees consider not doing so to be a serious offense. Rather than answer their accusation directly, Jesus points to how they willfully break God's law. Why do you overstep the commandment of God because of your tradition? He asks them. For example, God said, honor your father and your mother, and let the one who speaks abusively of his father or mother be put to death. But you say, whoever says to his father or mother, whatever I have that could benefit you is a gift dedicated to God, he need not honor his father at all. Matthew 15. 3-6. Exodus 20. 12. 21. 17. The Pharisees claim that money, property, or anything dedicated as a gift to God belongs to the temple, so it cannot be used for a different purpose. In reality, though, the person is still in possession of the dedicated gift. For example, a son might say that his money or property is korban, a gift dedicated to God or to the temple, as if the temple now has prior claim to the gift. The money or property is still the son's to use, yet he claims that it cannot be used to help his aged and needy parents. He thereby evades his responsibility toward them. Mark 7. 11. Jesus is rightly indignant at this twisting of God's law and says, you have made the word of God invalid because of your tradition. You hypocrites, Isaiah aptly prophesied about you when he said, this people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far removed from me. It is in vain that they keep worshipping me, for they teach commands of men as doctrines. The Pharisees have no response to Jesus' strong criticism. So he calls the crowd to come near. Listen and get the sense of it, he says. It is not what enters into a man's mouth that defiles him, but it is what comes out of his mouth that defiles him. Matthew 15. 6-11. Isaiah 29. 13. Later, when in a house, the disciples asked Jesus, do you know that the Pharisees were stumbled at hearing what you said? He replies, every plant that my heavenly Father did not plant will be uprooted. Let them be. Blind guides is what they are. If, then, a blind man guides a blind man, both will fall into a pit. Matthew 15. 12-14. Jesus seems surprised when, on behalf of the disciples, Peter asks for clarification about what defiles a man. Jesus responds, are you not aware that whatever enters into the mouth passes through the stomach and is discharged into the sewer? However, whatever comes out of the mouth comes from the heart, and those things defile a man. For example, out of the heart come wicked reasonings, murders, adulteries, sexual immorality, thefts, false testimony. What really defiles a person? Matthew 15. 1-20 Mark 7. 1-23 John 7. 136 Knees, blasphemies. These are the things that defile a man. But to take a meal with unwashed hands does not defile a man. Matthew 15. 17-20. Jesus is not discouraging normal hygiene, nor is he arguing that a person need not wash his hands before preparing food or eating a meal. Rather, he is condemning the hypocrisy of religious leaders who try to bypass God's righteous laws by resorting to human traditions. The fact is, wicked deeds originating in the heart are what defile a man. Jesus exposes human traditions the Pharisees and scribes make with accusation. As Jesus points out, how do the Pharisees willfully overstep God's law? What are the things that actually defile a man? 137 Having denounced the Pharisees for their self-serving traditions, Jesus leaves with his disciples. He heads for the regions of Tyre and Sidon in Phoenicia, many miles to the northwest. Jesus finds a house to stay in but does not want people to know that he is there. Yet, even here he cannot escape notice. A woman of Greek descent who was born in this area finds Jesus and begins begging. "Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David. My daughter is cruelly demon-possessed." Matthew 15. 22. Mark 7. 26. After a while, Jesus' disciples urge him. "Send her away, because she keeps crying out after us." In response, Jesus explains his reason for ignoring her. "I was not sent to anyone except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." The woman does not give up, though. She approaches and falls down before Jesus, pleading, "Lord, help me." Matthew 15. 23-25. Apparently to test her faith, Jesus alludes to the Jews' negative view of people of other nationalities. It is not right to take the bread of the children and throw it to the little dogs. Matthew 15. 26 In speaking of little dogs, or puppies, Jesus reveals his tender feelings towards non-Jews. His facial expression and compassionate voice must also convey those feelings. Rather than taking offense, the woman picks up on the reference to Jewish prejudices and humbly observes, "Yes, Lord, but really the little dogs do eat of the crumbs falling from the table of their masters." Jesus recognizes her good heart condition and says, "O woman, great is your faith. Let it happen to you as you wish." Matthew 15. 27, 28 And it does, even though the girl is not right there. When the woman returns home, she finds her daughter lying on the bed, completely healed. The demon was gone. Mark 7. 30. From the region of Phoenicia, Jesus and his disciples head across the country toward the upper Jordan River. They apparently cross the Jordan somewhere north of the Sea of Galilee and go into the region of the Decapolis. There, they go up on a mountain, but the crowds find them. The people bring to Jesus their lame, maimed, blind, and speechless. They lay these sick ones at Jesus' feet, and he cures them. Amazed, the people glorify the God of Israel. Jesus gives special attention to one man who is deaf and has a speech problem. You can understand how he must feel in a large crowd. Perhaps noting how nervous this man is, Jesus takes him away from the crowd. When they are alone, Jesus indicates what he is going to do for him. He puts his fingers into the man's ears and, after spitting, touches the man's tongue. Then looking toward heaven, Jesus utters a Semitic expression that means "be opened." At that, the man's hearing is restored, and he is able to speak normally. Jesus does not want this publicized, preferring that people believe in him based on what they personally see and hear. Mark 7. 32-36. Jesus' power to perform such cures has a deep effect on the observers, who are astounded beyond measure. They say, "He has done all things well. He even makes the deaf hear and the speechless speak." Mark 7. 37. Jesus cures a girl and a deaf man. Matthew 15. 21-31 Mark 7. 24-37, 138. Jesus heals a Phoenician woman's daughter. He cures a man who is deaf and speechless. Why does Jesus not immediately heal the Phoenician woman's daughter? After leaving the region of Phoenicia, where do Jesus and his disciples go? How does Jesus show compassion when dealing with the man who is deaf and speechless? 57, 139. Great crowds have flocked to Jesus in the region of the Decapolis, on the east side of the Sea of Galilee. They have come to hear him and to be healed, bringing along large baskets, or hampers, of provisions. In time, however, Jesus tells his disciples, "I feel pity for the crowd, because they have already stayed with me for 3 days and they have nothing to eat. If I send them off to their homes hungry, they will give out on the road, and some of them are from far away." The disciples ask, "From where will anyone get enough bread in this isolated place to satisfy these people?" Mark 8. 2-4. Jesus responds, "How many loaves do you have?" The disciples say, 7, and a few small fish. Matthew 15. 34. Then Jesus has the people recline on the ground. He takes the loaves and the fish, prays to God, and gives them to his disciples to distribute. Amazingly, all eat to satisfaction. The leftovers collected fill 7 large provision baskets, even though about 4,000 men, as well as women and children, have eaten. After Jesus sends the crowds away, he and the disciples cross by boat to Magadan, on the western shore of the Sea of Galilee. Here, Pharisees accompanied by some of the sect of the Sadducees try to test Jesus, asking him to display a sign from heaven. Realizing what their motives are, Jesus replies, "When evening falls, you say, 'It will be fair weather, for the sky is fire-red,' and in the morning, 'It will be wintry, rainy weather today, for the sky is fire-red but gloomy.' You know how to interpret the appearance of the sky, but the signs of the times you cannot interpret." Matthew 16. 2-3. Then Jesus tells the Pharisees and Sadducees that no sign will be given them except the sign of Jonah. Jesus and his disciples get in a boat and head towards Bethsaida on the northeast shore of the sea. En route, the disciples discover that they forgot to bring enough bread. They have just 1 loaf. Having in mind his recent encounter with the Pharisees and the Sadducean supporters of Herod, Jesus warns, "Keep your eyes open. Look out for the leaven of the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod." The disciples mistakenly think that his mention of leaven refers to their forgetting to bring bread. Noting their mistake, Jesus says, "Why do you argue over your having no bread?" Mark 8. 15-17. Jesus had recently provided bread for thousands of people. So the disciples should know that he is not concerned about a lack of literal loaves. "Do you not remember," he asks, "when I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000 men, how many baskets full of fragments you collected?" They answer, 12. Continuing, Jesus says, he multiplies loaves and warns about leaven. Matthew 15. 32. 16. 12. Mark 8. 1-21, 140. When I broke the 7 loaves for the 4,000 men, how many large baskets full of fragments did you take up? They reply, 7. Mark 8. 18-20. Jesus asks, "How is it you do not discern that I did not speak to you about bread?" He adds, "Watch out for the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees." Matthew 16. 11. Finally, the disciples get the point. Leaven is used to cause fermentation and make bread rise. Jesus is here using leaven as a symbol of corruption. He's warning the disciples to be on guard against the teaching of the Pharisees and Sadducees, which has a corrupting effect. Matthew 16. 12. Jesus feeds 4,000 men. He warns about the leaven of the Pharisees. Why do people flock to Jesus? When Jesus mentions leaven, what do the disciples mistakenly think? What does Jesus mean by the expression the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees? 58, 141. Jesus and his disciples arrive at Bethsaida. The people then bring a blind man to him and beg Jesus to touch the man to heal him. Taking the man by the hand, Jesus leads him outside the village.